Colorado Springs mayor confirming that suspect is in fact in custody. And right now, let's listen in to a live news conference happening there now.
The individual brought some items into the building with him, and that we have to work with our EOD units, our explosive ordnance units, to make sure that none of those items are a further hazard to the people on scene. At that point, then, we are going to have to treat this as a crime scene. We are going to have to go through, we are going to have to identify if there are any individuals on scene that are injured and have not been transported, or individuals on scene that are deceased. We do not have any numbers at this point. The only thing that I can tell you is that there were 11 people that were transported to local hospitals. Of those 11 people, 5 of them were police officers from various agencies that have responded today.
Do you know if there are any fatalities?
I do not have any confirmation of fatalities at this point. Again, as I said, we're going to have to work through the scene because we are now treating it as a crime scene and investigating it. We did get an individual in custody at 4:52 p.m. in our time zone here. That individual has been transported away from the scene, and obviously we're going to start our investigation from there.
Can you walk through those last?
Okay, I need to questions at a time. Steve.
Question: was the suspect shot at all? Is he injured, or was he at all?
I don't have information that he was shot.
Eric?
Walk us through those last few moments, because you said earlier there was no communication with the suspect. Talk about
Correct.
that.
Earlier there was no communication with the suspect. We did get officers inside of the building at the Planned Parenthood, and the officers were able to shout to the suspect and make communication with him. And at that point, they were able to get him to surrender, and he was taken into custody. I do not have an identity on the suspect. As I've explained before, this is going to be a complicated scene that is going to take hours, probably days, to process for us here. In addition to that, we are working through the state law that requires the sheriff's office to investigate whenever our officers are involved in a shooting. And since we know that some of our officers did fire shots, they will be investigating that portion of this scene.
Lieutenant Buckley, now that you know where...
One moment, Steve.
That this happened at Planned Parenthood, do we have a motive yet? Was the man trying to...
We only just have the individual in custody within the last 15 minutes. So to even speculate on a motive would not be reasonable.
Is shelter in place lifted at the grocery store?
Did you guys perform today?
I'm sorry, Steve?
How many rescues did you guys perform?
You know, I don't have the numbers on that. I know that our officers acted with untold valor to make sure that individuals were safely taken out of the Planned Parenthood building. We also had officers that immediately responded to the surrounded businesses, and they made sure that people received any type of medical aid and they were safe in those surrounding businesses. This is still very much unfolding for us because we've moved from the active threat to people's lives stage, and now we are looking at doing our investigation. And those are the type of things that will come out as we do our investigation. Obviously, we do have some concern because this is a criminal investigation, and we will be working with our partners towards some type of prosecution for this. And that means that there are things that we can bring forward and the things that we can't bring forward as we work through the prosecution of this individual for the crimes that he committed today against our community.
Ma'am?
Do you know what weapon was found?
Oh, one moment. Miss Kirby is identifying.
Thank you very much. Have the people in the King Soopers and the other surrounding businesses been allowed to come out?
We are working through the process of allowing those individuals out. Obviously, we have to make sure that there's no other items that would possess or present a threat to them as we remove them from those buildings.
Do we know how many people are in these lockdown buildings?
We don't. That's something that we're going to have to do as part of our after action and part of our report for the...
Sir, right there. Jesse?
Do you know how many, do you know what kind of weapons or weapon that the suspect was found with? Did he have, can you talk about what kind of...
the only information I have is that the original information is that he had some type of a long firearm.
Sir?
So the officers have made it into the building and they're now clearing the building?
The officers are actively clearing the building.
Does that mean the devices then that you were mentioning earlier have been rendered safe?
No, they have not. We don't know
And is
whether
that
they're
his
devices.
car?
Those are things that we are currently processing and that we're working through.
And are those the things that are in his car in the parking lot?
I'm not even sure if he has a car in the parking lot, sir. Those are things that we're working through.
The 11 folks who are transported to the hospital, how serious are their injuries?
I don't have an update on that.
Could you please look at the center of the crowd when you answer all questions, because
Sorry, I don't have an update
That's okay.
on
Thank you.
the individuals that were transported or their status at this
Look
time.
at the center.
Okay, Eric?
Mayor Southers, as a former Attorney General, as a former El Paso County DA, and now the Mayor of Colorado Springs, what would you say to the citizens about this sad day and about how exemplary law enforcement has been today?
Well, I spent a couple hours in the command center watching as the officers were monitoring movement within the building on security cameras and communicating to the officers who were in the building, and it was the most incredible work on behalf of officers trying to minimize the number of fatalities and get this guy in custody. And I was just incredibly impressed. While it's a terrible, terrible tragedy, the way the police handled this, I think, minimized or kept it from being even a worse tragedy.
Can you elaborate on some of those things that you thought really stood out?
The fact that they were able to identify where this person was on cameras and communicate to officers in the building where he was located.
You call it a tragedy. You're not yet willing to say whether there were fatalities or not?
No, I'm not. We need to figure out exactly what the nature of the victim's injuries are.